Game of the Week, Uncharted 3. Now, when I reviewed Uncharted 2, I don't really know if I stressed enough how much I love that game, but guys, I really love Uncharted 2. That being said, that really leaves Uncharted 3 in the dust, but not because it's bad. This third installment is not just stuck between Uncharted 2 and 4, which are the best games above 1 and 3, but Drake's Deception is also stuck between Uncharted 2 and The Last of Us. So I don't know about you guys, but anytime I go through 3, I always realize just how forgettable the game is, which is unfortunate because it's actually not bad. It's just there are a few Naughty Dog games that overshadow it. That being said, this installment is the most cinematic of the trilogy. The trilogy itself is known to be very cinematic compared to other games of its time. That's why it was so successful. As much as I love the second game, I will always admit that over all of the 4 games, the series has continued to improve in every sense, especially in combat. What Drake's Deception is really known for, in terms of story, is the backstory between Nate and Sully. They were the found family story of Naughty Dog before Joel and Ellie. I honestly love that about this game, and this concept of their found family is such a drive for Nate, more so in the second half of the story. Now, it can't be an Uncharted game without the OG trio. Elena is back, and according to the voice actors, they married between the second and third games. So much credit goes to Elena because she knows who she married, and as much as she loves him, it's hard being Nathan Drake's wife. His drive to find treasure always puts him in the most perilous adventures, and while it's an overall theme that Nate is sometimes willing to go too far, it's Elena that drives that theme the hardest in this game specifically. But even so, she sticks by his side, and that leads to some beautiful moments between the characters. Again, Uncharted 2 is just more memorable for me. However, there were still some iconic set pieces here. Love the airplane chase that was essentially the climax of Toy Story 2. This does lead to the iconic plane sequence that was so iconic that the crappy movie also decided to use it. You know, when the cockpit opens and Nate is relying on the cargo to climb away from falling to death. And then this is followed by the desert sequence, which is so long, but for good reason, because you become very immersed in Nate's helplessness as he struggles onward through the desert dunes. Overall, Drake's Deception was a great end to the original trilogy. The combat is the most polished of the first 3, with even more improved combat mechanics and combos, smoother character controls, and the sometimes difficult puzzle. The music is always epic. The cast, oh my gosh, thank you again. Nolan, Emily, and Richard, truly. And shout out to the rest of the iconic supporting cast. Also, shout out to the advertising of this game. There's that weird Subway commercial, but also Harrison Ford himself played the game, the original Nathan Drake, so by the time Uncharted 3 came out, it was, it was kind of big at this point. And again, please look up Retro Replay's Let's Play. They went through the Uncharted 3 game right at the start of COVID, so it was basically the highlight of the year. So many actors came on and shared their experience and just hang out with Nolan North, who was like, Nolan is a godsend, and he's the best. I know everyone's been raging about the latest season, but I just want to talk about the first couple of seasons as I watched them last summer. Show of the week is Rick and Morty, seasons 1 and 2. Rick and Morty themselves are really quite the dynamic duo. Morty is just a dumb teenage boy dealing with teenage problems while also dealing with the crazy adventure crap from his grandpa. He tries to be the moral balance, but Rick's been around a long time, and despite his best efforts, Morty still manages to somehow make things worse every time, and it's always Rick that has to come in and clean up after him. But Morty, I just want to give him a hug sometimes. But bro, when Rick is right, he's right. And OMG, speaking of Rick, there are so few fictional characters that compare to Rick Sanchez. His intelligence and humor, unmatched. He makes me laugh with every line. I mean, this show is right up my alley to my sense of humor. And I pretty much always agree with him as well, even when he's just making sarcastic comments about, like, regular life. He's got a point. One thing that always gets me is all the hints to Rick's past. There are too many instances to mention when it comes to Rick Sanchez lore. I would watch a show or read an entire book dedicated to his backstory. I've seen plenty of fans come up with theories as well. Actually, I have made it through season 5, and am I right in saying that Rick's original wife and daughter dies, and that's how his whole mad scientist arc started? Like, he's not even in his original dimension. I don't remember. I don't know, man, but between all the sarcasm and the fourth wall breaking, there is a deep story here, and that's a good mix of energy. Focusing on seasons 1 and 2, I gotta mention my favorite episodes. Anatomy Park, Simulation, and Inception episodes were solid in the earlier part of the first season. When I first watched Rick and Morty back in the day, I wanted to see if the show was worth the hype. Then I got to the flu outbreak prom episode thing. The ending when Rick and Morty had to go to another dimension and kill themselves and bury themselves in the backyard as Morty had an existential crisis. I was like, dang, this show is for real. But this show is still a whole lot of fun.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
The Dimension television episodes are solid. Like, they totally just sat around and recorded an improv session and then animated it later, right? There was the Total Recall Parasite episode. The universe within a universe within a battery was fantastic. The season 1 finale was all fun and games until Rick froze time and had to deal with the time paradoxes right after in the season 2 premiere. Like, whoa, if that episode didn't win the show an Emmy, I don't think nothing will. That was amazing. The season 2 finale was not as fun. Rip Bird Person for now. And also rip Rick, as the season finale cliffhanger is him getting arrested. Now, this is only a taste of what the show has to offer. If you've only seen the first couple of seasons, well, you got Pickle Rick and Evil Morty waiting for you in season 3. Not to mention the other seasons that exist. And the show, it's definitely worth a watch.
I'm Pickle Rick!
Yep, I'm gonna be that person. Okay, but Frozen came out in 2013. It's just about 10 years old now, so of course I'm gonna talk about the Frozen films today. I'm sorry. Right off the bat, we can't even get through the intro logos, and Frozen establishes itself as a film with a beautiful soundtrack. The soundtrack is so magical, while the songs are so fun and catchy, as we all know. They can easily get stuck in our head. I know people hate on Frozen because of Let It Go, and, it was overused, and the Frozen franchise is everywhere, sometimes in a toxic way. But, wow, it's genuinely good. And every time I watch the movies, I just remember how good they actually are. Like, for me, it's so easy to see past the parasitic relationship that Frozen has on the world. Because these movies are so good. The music alone is a testament to this. I remember sitting in theaters watching the first movie 10 years ago, and the end of Do You Want to Build a Snowman made me cry. And I was so shocked because I just didn't expect that type of emotion. Like, it seems so lighthearted at first, right? And there's only a handful of Disney movies prior that just make you so depressed like that, like Fox and the Hound and The Lion King, but oh my god. They went there, and Do You Want to Build a Snowman? And you know what? I will admit, even watching it recently, I still got pretty emotional. I had a very similar reaction. And then you go to the next song. First Time in Forever is such a bop, but then Elsa joins in for the first time in that song, and it escalates the song as a whole. Idina Menzel kills it as Elsa, and man, I am so lesbian for Elsa. Josh Gad as Olaf genuinely makes me laugh sometimes. I honestly wouldn't dislike the character, but between Josh and Olaf's dialogue, it's really harder than it should be.
Some people are worth melting for.
Jonathan Groff, yes sir. But dang, he was criminally underused in this first Frozen film. I'm glad the sequel did him justice. And shout out to Alan Tudyk as the Duke of Weaseltown.
Weaselton!
He's got a fine repertoire in voice acting, especially in the Disney company now, but the Duke is something else. The story, despite its criticizable plot, is deep and so full of heart. It's a tale of two sisters and how love can conquer fear. Seeing Elsa learn that fearing her power was dangerous as compared to embracing her power. Oh my gosh, I'm so gay for Elsa. I'm sorry. She learned that what made her different wasn't a curse or made her a monster. It made her special and unique. What else was unique about these films is their take on true love. This really was the beginning of a new era. True love without a frozen heart? That didn't mean romantic love. The 2010s saw hardly any romance-centric Disney films. Frozen was one of them and really challenged what we expected from a Disney film. The Disney company being started on Snow White and Cinderella, the classic romantic fairy tales of all time. And that was a powerful moment. When Anna jumped in the way to protect Elsa like that, I still remember what it felt like to see this entire scene in theaters. I was quite literally frozen to my seat. Anyways, Frozen was truly special. Maybe it has been overhyped, sure, but 10 years later, it's still a masterpiece. Haters gonna hate, but there's a reason why it was so hyped. It is objectively a phenomenal film. Jumping into the sequel, Frozen 2, which is already 4 years old. I feel really old, guys. This sequel comes with lore. We essentially learn about Elsa's powers and why she has them. She's basically the Avatar, but it was such a cool adventure to see this mystical forest. I remember the first trailer was just Elsa battling the ocean, and it took me so long to accept that this movie actually had the potential to be a musical, because I was like, there's no way. There's no way she's doing parkour in the ocean, and they're still gonna have songs, right? This movie is just such on a different level than the first. It's wild. Even the shorts that they had between the movies, it's so different. And I love it. The animation is stellar, from lighting to textures. I was nerding a lot observing the animation with this one. I still find the film's first songs to be more iconic and catchy, but we still got some great musical moments. Jonathan Groff is finally given a chance to use his talents. I literally cried when I first saw Lost in the Woods in the theaters because I was laughing that hard. I was literally in tears because that's how hard I was laughing. The cringy music video aesthetic was all I could have asked for Kristoff. Oh my god. But show yourself? Man, I am really gay. Not only does Elsa look like a goddess in this sequence, but the song is so beautiful and powerful. It was the best conclusion to the Elsa song trilogy, along with Let It Go and Into the Unknown. The entire film was the best way to continue her arc. Frozen was all about Elsa learning to live without fear, but the sequel was all about her trying to find her true place in the world. The story decision added such dimension to the character rather than leaving her as a queen with ice powers. They made her powers important. They also killed Olaf. He was Thanos, and, I know it was only temporary, but that was a very bold move, Disney. Disney is really good at creating crappy sequels to perfect films. Frozen 2 did not follow suit. It joins Toy Story, Incredibles, Lion King, and Brother Bear in the exclusive list of acceptable Disney sequels. This Star Award segment is definitely a bit unusual, but stick with me because it's important. The Star Award this week goes to all going through dissociative identity disorder. All systems, all alters. Let me explain. I was recently introduced to this YouTube channel, Dissociative, and binged as many videos of theirs. Now I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I sure as hell know a lot about this unique disorder as someone who doesn't have it themselves. I at least know enough that I feel like I can talk about it today. So first of all, what is DID? How do you get it? Children who experience severe, constant trauma as a child will go into a bit of a defense mode. What you would call amnesia barriers are built so the child can survive the daily life without being mindful of their traumatic experiences and memories. But because this child is so young, the defense mechanism deeply affects the way their core personality is developed as they get older. Think of it like this. The brain is a room, and in this room, there should be one single box with all memories stored inside. But because of the protective amnesia in a traumatized child, the room has many boxes, each with their own separate memories. At a certain age, a distinct personality will be formed and hold the box of memories. But when there's multiple boxes, there's multiple personalities. This is why dissociative identity disorder was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, because having DID means you have multiple personalities. But these personalities are actual beings. They think, therefore they are. They have their own ideas, emotions, memories, their own purpose within the system being a group of personalities. These personalities are known as alters, and a system can have a few alters or even up to a few hundred. It just depends on what the brain and the body needs for survival. Okay, so any systems watching this, was this an accurate explanation? There are so many resources out there to inform you more on systems and alters, why types of alters exist and what they do, what it's like living day to day with alters. I've done research, I've found others on social media sharing their experience, but once again, I will recommend Dissociative, who explains it very well. Please check out their channel. Now, I don't want to say it's cool to have DID, because if you have it, you had to literally go to hell and back to develop all of your alters. But it still is quite interesting. You know how you have your own inner monologue going? Well, my inner monologue in conscience is only one voice, so it's really hard to comprehend what it's like to hear multiple voices. It's just still interesting to learn about. And all the systems deserve love and acceptance for everything they do and go through. I say this because there is quite the stigma against DID that can make systems so unwelcome in society. And this is where the entertainment industry comes in, because this is still a nerdy podcast, and this wasn't just an advocacy segment. Alright, so when you think of multiple personalities in film, you might think of Psycho or Fight Club. We don't talk about it. But a lot of people also think of Split. Now, I saw Split not too long after the film released, and I loved it. I found the concept of multiple personalities to be interesting even back then. But then the Beast made an appearance, and I hated the ending after that. Ironically, I hated it for not being an accurate depiction, but not for the reason I should have. I hated it because the Beast made the film some sort of sci-fi or something. I was perfectly fine with seeing this as a psychological horror, and it made it feel really real, and that was awesome. Unfortunately, the kidnapping altar was just as harmful to the DID community as the Beast. Watching this movie myself, I never really made an assumption about people like this. I figured multiple personality was a real thing, but I didn't expect it to be a big issue for the general public. But people could watch this movie, see the kidnapper altar, and easily assume, oh, people with multiple personalities all have evil alters. They are a danger to society and should be locked away. Okay, false? That should not be the takeaway from this movie. Not only does it increase the stigma against DID, but it's also specifically bad for all the persecutor alters out there, as it's usually the persecutor alters that can be interpreted as quote-unquote evil alters, and that's really unfair because, like I said, every alter carries their own memories and trauma, and persecutors, I believe, are the ones that carry a lot more trauma than I think other alters, that gives them the title of persecutor, because they're just so angry and they deal with trauma in sometimes harmful ways. That's how bad they have it. Go ahead and watch the film, and by all means, enjoy it. There are some good aspects to it, but please do not use it as a lesson on DID. Now, going from James McAvoy to Rami Malek, as we go to the other side of Hollywood, the television series Mr. Robot. This show was the highlight for me last year. Each season got its own podcast segment here on Friendly Fangirl Podcast. Everything about the show is good. I will say, as I learned more about DID, there were new pieces of information that I was able to correlate to a moment on the show, and it made me excited about Mr. Robot all over again. Mr. Robot is the best depiction of DID. Thanks to the writers and Rami Malek, between all the F Society drama, we were following Elliot as he learned that he was a system. This was really hit hard in the final season as we see alters of each family member and a younger version of himself. The final scene of the show, it's revealed that the Elliot that we knew was actually an alter, the host of the system. The real Elliot was blocked away, and Mr. Robot himself was an interject alter based on Elliot's childhood abuser, whose purpose was mostly to protect the Elliots from those traumatic memories. Throughout the show, Elliot definitely has his bouts of amnesia episodes. His sister is also familiar with his condition and can recognize which alter she is talking to. Remember that inner monologue thing I mentioned before? Well, that's what the narration is all about. And when we hear Christian Slater's narration, that means it's Mr. Robot who is fronting on his own, whereas it seems Elliot and him were blendy or co-fronting or co-conscious for like most of seasons 1, 2, and 3. Now, there may have been points here and there that dramatized his DID for plot or entertainment, but all in all, learning about DID, Elliot was my number one reference in understanding the disorder. Even with any inaccuracies displayed, Elliot has got to be the best example of DID in entertainment the entertainment industry has ever seen so far. And Elliot was a real anti-hero, not a pure villain psychopath, so checkmate, negative stigma. Sure, a couple of the alters did some drastic actions, but they got the job done, and it really benefited the people, if you ask me. It was all for the greater good in the end, and, you know, the host, Elliot, that we don't really know, he woke up to a very different world, very different society, if you say. Now, this entire segment has been off the top of my head. I have not done any research specifically for this podcast, just the research I have been doing in the past, watching Dissociative. This means I really want to rewatch Mr. Robot, knowing what I know now, just to see what other nods to DID I've missed. Again, please research dissociative identity disorder on your own and send positivity to the systems out there. They're not crazy, they're just different. They're dealing with trauma and need to be helped, not shunned. And for any systems out there, if you have not seen Mr. Robot, definitely give it a chance. And then, let me know if it's as accurate of a representation as I say it is.